But every time they see a wall of scandal, he's the Kool-Aid man, right? It's like, oh yeah, and just breaks on through.
It's getting bad out there. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, we've got the Human Rights Commission sounding the alarm on how bad things are in Canada. Carney has not made life better for Canadians. In fact, things have only gotten worse. Food inflation is through the roof. Now we're seeing Doug Ford being wrapped up in a scandal. We have another clip of him doubling down on his blame game of Mark Carney yesterday. We got a bunch of other stuff here. Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off, we've got Canada just signed $200 million deal for new spaceport in Nova Scotia. 10-year agreement aims to give Canada its own launch site so Canada doesn't have to rely on SpaceX. Yeah, this isn't happening. This is just going to be a waste of money. We all know this is going to be a waste of money. I mean, we've got Telesat Lightspeed is being sued right now. They separated their company, detaching their best assets away from their investors. Telesat Lightspeed being run by Dan Goldberg, one of Mark Carney's good friends. And they're setting this up for Telesat, obviously, but this is not going anywhere. We got Pierre Poilievre down in Texas meeting with the governor of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott. This is a good look here. Poilievre getting all the good meetings here with important figures down in America. You kind of wish he had a meeting with Donald Trump, try to work on a deal for the tariffs. He would be hailed the hero. The polling numbers would switch immediately. Meanwhile, in Canada, we've got Melissa posting this. Yikes. Bitfarms seeking approval for domicile from Canada to the United States. That's right. As she points out, a $1.7 billion valuation company here wants to move from Canada to the United States. Right now, their headquarters are in Toronto, but they say the move would offer a strong economic and strategic rationale. Yeah, no kidding, because Canada's awful under the Liberals. Meanwhile, we've got this, the Terrebonne riding, longest ballot committee is collecting signatures for this nonsense. Can these guys just go away? How long are they going to get away with disrupting democracy before they are removed from this process completely? Meanwhile, we've got Marty up north posting this, and I thought this is a valid point to make here. So TELUS and Loblaws have been hacked, and your data is being held for ransom, and we've heard barely a peep. That's right, nobody's talking about this story. TELUS was hacked, digital hit with massive data breach. The hack is described as not a smash and grab ransom, but strategic, disciplined, and optimized for maximum leverage. And we've got Loblaws investigated data breach after identifying suspicious activity. Loblaws on Tuesday was investigating data breach. The retailer said criminal third party accessed some basic customer information such as names, phone numbers, email addresses, etc. So reassuring, just stealing all the information. Moving ahead, we have something we're getting accustomed to seeing in Canada. More truck driving accidents. In this case, it's with a train. Yeah, so he curses a lot there, but yeah, this train just goes right through that truck. Why the truck driver put the truck right on the train track, nobody knows. Can we have some proper truck driver training and licensing in this country? Right now, you have these guys come over from South Asia. One of them gets a truck driver license, and then they just share it among their 25 friends. So you've essentially got numerous people driving trucks who have no idea how to drive the trucks. No wonder we have these problems. This is so dangerous. Sir, you can't park there. No. Moving ahead, I just want to do a quick update on this. So there's a couple YouTube channels I brought up a couple of months ago. These were AI channels mimicking someone famous down in America praising Mark Carney. Both of these channels, and as we see, so this one was called The Rational Perspective, it has been terminated, and this one too, Reich Analytics, it has also been terminated. I completely forgot about these, and I was going through my links, and I decided to check, and whoa, there it is, they're both been gone. YouTube recently cracked down on AI channels and been wiping them out because it doesn't want this AI slop all over the place, so this is good to see. Moving ahead, we've got the Liberal government appeals ruling against the use of the Emergencies Act to Supreme Court. This is a mondo failure by Mark Carney. He could have just detached himself from this, but he decided to do the opposite. It was already found in the lower and federal courts that the use of the Emergencies Act was unlawful. And what are they doing? They're now pushing back against this. This is being taken to the Supreme Court. Well, they'll look at their case, whether they'll even open it up. But what this really does, it just ties Mark Carney to Justin Trudeau and hitches that wagon. And we're not surprised because, well, Mark Carney wrote this article for the Globe and Mail back during the Freedom Convoy here. You can see his name, Mark Carney, contributed to the Globe and Mail. I've put this on the channel a couple of times. We're not going to read this out, but basically Mark Carney in favor of locking down bank accounts and taking action against Canadians. Drawing the line means choking off the money that financed this occupation. There's a bunch of lines in here shows he's very much in favor of locking down people's bank accounts. Mark Carney's not a nice man. And while we're talking about Mark Carney, well, here's his record. We've got this on Blacklock's Reporter. Economy is a rights crisis. That's right. Canadian economy is so poor, it represents a human rights crisis, says the Canadian Human Rights Commission. That's where we are today, where things are so bad that the Human Rights Commission in Canada is blowing the whistle on the living conditions in Canada. Says the review takes place as Canada faces some of the most significant challenges in generations, including a substantial cost of living crisis, which at its core is a human rights crisis, said the submission to the Human Rights Committee on the occasion of Canada's 7th periodic review. It says, as an alarming number of people in Canada face food insecurity as well as increasing levels of poverty and homelessness, the fundamental human right to an adequate standard of living is at risk. Further says national poverty rates have increased 4 years in a row, according to Statistics Canada. 4 million people lived below the poverty line, while approximately 10 million people, or 25.5% of the Canadian population in the provinces, lived in households that reported experiencing some form of food insecurity. 1 in 4 Canadians do not have enough food in our country. This is absolutely disgraceful. And this is coming from Statistics Canada themselves. It goes on to talk about them doing some polling on whether Canada is going into a 2026 recession. They says, questioned as to whether they felt the government of Canada was headed in the right direction when it came to creating jobs in Canada, a roughly equal number felt it was headed in the wrong direction as those who were more certain in their views. We saw this recently with Abacus data on X. David Coletto framed it as 42% of Canadians think Canada is going in the right direction as if it's a good thing. But if you look at his data, it was actually 43% of Canadians said we're going in the wrong direction. It's very interesting how these guys twist the narrative. So this is some pretty scathing stuff here. Now jumping over to CBC, listen to this nonsense. I'm just going to briefly play a clip here. We've got David McGuinty on here with JP Tasker. And look what McGuinty brings up once again.
Critic says it's really shameful, frankly, that Canadians have been left in the dark about what went on in Kuwait. Will you commit to provide more transparency? Don't the people here in this country have a right to know what's going on with their armed forces?
They have a right to know as long as it has no bearing on the operational security and the security of the armed forces, women and men who may be serving in the region. I can't put these individuals at risk. And calls to put them at risk by revealing information that should not be revealed is, I think.
So he goes on to babble here, and then what does he do? He goes back to, once again, the security clearance.
I really would like the leader of the official opposition, Mr. Poilievre, with all due respect to him and the role he plays, I would like him to get a top secret clearance so he can come in and get actually briefed on the situation on the ground.
Oh, this is a joke. I would, with all due respect, appreciate if Mark Carney stopped doing Brookfield deals at every single stop around the planet to enrich himself while he's tanking our country. People are starving, with all due respect. Now, with Pierre going around all over the place, Texas, some of the northern states, Michigan, Detroit, etc., here we've got JP Tasker asking Lisa Raitt about this and whether this is a good thing or a bad thing.
Lisa, you mentioned Poilievre. He's not going anywhere. He just got a huge mandate when we were there in Calgary. You know, obviously party members, or at least the delegates that were on hand for that convention, are behind him. But it does seem like a tall order, right, to kind of turn things around. He's a known quantity. It's not like he can introduce himself to the people, and maybe that will give him a boost. They know who he is by this point. He's been on the job for 4 years come September.
This is a problem for Poilievre because the CBC has been slandering him day after day, $1 million a day. They've had all this runway to just drive him into the ground. So I don't know how he breaks out of that, because that's what he really needs to break through on. I think he needs to go on CBC and debunk some of this nonsense to their face.
What is the secret sauce for him? Do you just wait for Carney to fumble the ball? Do you maybe get a little more bold, like what he's been doing over the last couple of weeks with respect to Trump? Like, what is the path forward for him?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, JP, to be honest. I think he has to pick his spots where he shows a clear delineation or a clear contrast with the prime minister in terms of a policy, and just really zone in on that. If it's going to be affordability, it's going to be affordability, and come up with policy that is going to be something that Canadians are liking, and continuing to do the visits that he's doing. He met with the governor in Texas today. You know, that makes sense. Why? Because Houston, Texas is an important place where a lot of Canadian companies actually operate, especially in the oil and gas field. So he's making the right connections, and he's going to come back with more information, and hopefully he'll use it to his advantage when he goes into the House of Commons. I don't know whether or not they're going to be changing the way in which he approaches debate or the way in which he approaches questions. That really is going to be up to the leader himself and the people around him. But I do think that doing the things that he's doing right now in policy makes a whole lot of sense. And he's got a long road to go ahead of him. And never say never.
Yeah, do you think, I mean, we were talking about a majority government, possibly Lisa. Does Poilievre stick around for 3.5 more years if that's what Carney can put together? Like, do you think that he really is the guy in October 2029 as he is now?
I don't have a single doubt in my mind, JP. Not a single doubt. He is not a quitter. Not at all. He's tried so hard to get back to where he is today, and he wants to put it over the finish line. And that's one thing. He won't stop fighting. He will not stop fighting. He's going to go as far as he possibly can and make sure he gets his message out and that he tries to win as many votes and hearts and minds as possible. So no, he's going to be on that ballot, definitely, in 29 if we get that far.
Yeah, he just needs to change up a few tactics here because clearly Carney, just like Trudeau, have weaponized the media against him. As I've said numerous times, I think they got to attach Carney to Donald Trump. Then suddenly Carney will lose a bunch of support. Also, if you time that with the NDP leader coming in, who's likely to be Avi Lewis, and now there's this new progressive option for many lefties, then you tie Carney to Trump, a bunch of these people would scurry right over to the NDP. Just time that perfectly, and I think Carney would have some problems in the polls. So jumping over to CTV, Vasi is just as shocked as all of us as Doug Ford moving to change the laws so he doesn't have to give out his cell phone information. Doug Ford's Skills Development Fund dished out contracts that had ties to Doug Ford and his administration there. And when this was brought up and this started to blow up, what did he do? He stopped using his government phone. He started using his personal phone, and now that's why they're trying to get the records from his personal phone. So he's trying to change the law so they can't get those records, and he's making them retroactive to protect himself from giving up those records. So what kind of dirty business dealings was Doug Ford doing with his personal phone? And you're going to see him here. He calls out Carney getting away with murder, as in he wants to be able to get away with murder.
People want to know and have a right to know, all of you have a right to know what he was doing, what kind of business he was conducting on his cell phone. And we know that a lot of this relates to the Greenbelt controversy, but what else is he trying to hide? He's fighting pretty damn hard to hide that cell phone record, and I'd like to know why, and I think the people of Ontario have a right to know as well.
Ontario's NDP leader Marit Stiles there blasting Premier Doug Ford's move to overhaul how freedom of information works in the province. The Ford government is proposing excluding cabinet ministers and their offices from access to information requests, and that means they will be able to keep documents and emails about their decision-making a secret. Ford says the move is aimed at protecting the privacy of citizens who contact him and protecting the government from Chinese interference. Here's what he told reporters.
We're going to protect the confidentiality of messages being sent by constituents across the province. It's as simple as that. I find it ironic that the federal government, they can do it. They can get away with murder. Not a problem. Bless you, Jamie. And they can do it. No one says boo. Other provinces can say it, do it. No one says a word. But I guess there's double standards, and that's fine. But we're going to move forward with this.
That's right, because the Liberals are so awful and corrupt. Doug Ford wants to be awful and corrupt too, and be able to get away with this kind of stuff. Just deplorable language he's used here.
The only politician not on a March break vacation this week is Doug Ford. You've been at every press conference, one a day. What is the truth behind all this from where you sit? Like, why are they doing this now?
Oh, well, I mean, there's a few different reasons being batted about. The premier and his government says they're doing this to update antiquated 40-year-old legislation and move it in line with provinces and the federal government. And that is true to an extent, but by doing so, they're actually taking away transparency. They're making their government less accountable and less available for these document requests. It also comes on the heels of a court decision that ruled against the premier and said and called for the release of his call logs, because we know he does contact a lot of people on his phone, and he says they contact him, and he's arguing that he needs to protect their privacy. But the laws as it's written already would do that. And the premier has talked about he doesn't want people's personal problems being aired in the public. He doesn't want their health records being aired in the public. And that wouldn't happen as the law currently is. So, I mean, the government is doing this, I think, because they were more open than other provinces, and that has potentially created a problem for them in terms of media stories and potentially embarrassing coverage. But I think they've kind of misjudged the public interest in this, Vashi. There's been a lot of outrage and questions about why the premier is doing this, particularly when it comes to his phone and who he's talking to, and questions about that. So I think it raises allegations and concerns about secrecy. And I think that is a problem for the premier as he's trying to defend this in the public realm.
Doug Ford is using the justification that Carney has secrecy, so he should have it too. This just further erodes transparency in Canada. Doug Ford needs to be tossed out of office.
Will they back off, though? Because I again would imagine, George, that they would have sense, maybe not the degree to which the backlash would occur, though Shakir would contend that that's not even the case, but just the fact that the opposition maybe could not capitalize on it, right? So even though there might be public backlash, like will the opposition be able to capitalize on it to a degree that pushes the government to change position or have to backtrack? Like, I think their calculation going in, given the lack of strength in both opposition parties right now, was no.
Well, I'm going to set your last point aside for my friend Mart, but moving from that, I will say that
Understandable, but I have to say it. I have to be honest.
But moving on to the point at hand, I will say that I think you're right. Like Doug Ford generally and his whole crew, their sense of things is every time they see a wall. So like the Greenbelt strategy, for instance, it should have taken a government down. It didn't at all. I managed a campaign in Oshawa. We were able to hold on to the seat there, but it was not the issue on the doorstep that it should have been. But every time they see a wall of scandal, he's the Kool-Aid man, right? It's like, oh yeah, and just breaks on through. And it doesn't matter. He can move past that scandal. And I think that is what, to your point, that is what his team and he thinks he's going to be able to do with this one. And maybe, but he's going to run out of that ability at some point. And this one, look, when he's standing up there and saying, look, this other province gets to get away with murder, but I don't. Like, he's got to rethink some of his talking points on this. Look at the terrible things they can do. I want to do those too. Is not the great argument to say what he's trying to say, which is that, maybe we need to clean up these laws a little bit or something. But again, to Dan's point, to wrap up on that, it's just this is a man who's given out his personal cell phone number because he's trying to say how open he is. But he's the premier, so that personal cell phone now becomes the public cell phone because don't forget we're paying for it anyway. And so yes, we should have the right to at least have a process that says what are you doing with that government device. And so that process exists across the country. And when you want to stand in front of the people and say I want to be less accountable. Just trust me. Eventually, people are going to push back and say no.
It isn't part of this.
Doug Ford is the Kool-Aid man. When he said that, it was like, he is. That's 100%. Oh yeah, let's just push past it. I don't think Doug Ford's going to be able to push past this. It just looks awful. Hiding his cell phone record. Clearly, there's some dirty dealings going on there. If this does tank Doug Ford's numbers in the polls, then what happens here? Does Mark Carney get more support in Ontario? Say if Nate Erskine-Smith becomes leader there, he looks like a familiar face, was with Carney in the government. Doug Ford looking like a liar, he's got something to hide. Does this further rally support for the Liberals in Ontario? Canada's got some serious problems.